Hi, I'm Michael Nogan, co-founder and general partner of Overton Venture Capital. Along with my co-founder, Carrie Miller, I am excited to welcome you to today's spotlight on the transformation of retail. We have a great panel lined up today. Thank you to our audience who submitted questions in advance, and we will try to get to as many as we can. For those who do not know Overton Venture Capital, we are an early stage venture capital firm investing in transformative brands and services. We partner with ambitious entrepreneurs who are meeting the challenges and opportunities of today's rapidly growing digital commerce landscape, always with an eye on the consumer and her changing behavior. One of those entrepreneurs is Trevor Sumner, who we're excited to have joining us today on the panel. Today's topic, the in-store experience in a COVID world, is very top of mind. All this, of course, has been appended by social distancing, retail bankruptcies, and store closures. Some stores might not survive. Others we expect will look radically different on the other side. Overton believes consumers will still want to engage with products and brands in a physical environment. We believe there will be an increase in digital interactions and measurable engagement, allowing for even greater ability to understand consumer behaviors and needs and help consumers by influencing their actions and shopping habits. Our panel will share their biggest learnings from COVID-19, including the pre-crisis investments that had the biggest payoff during the pandemic, the technologies retailers should prioritize in the aftermath, and how online consumer behavior is expected to change the in-store experience longer term. I'd like to introduce our panelists today. Trevor Sumner is CEO of Perch, the leading platform as a service provider for product engagement, marketing, and store. He's a serial entrepreneur. He previously co-founded LocalBox, which was acquired by Blackstone Group in 2014. Fred Garantaby is the current Chief Experience Officer of FGXI and Essilor Luxottica Company. Most recently, Fred led global digital innovation at Coty, the parent company of CoverGirl, Max Factor, and Sally Hansen. And finally, Janice Sullivan, who is today's moderator, is also an Overton operating partner. Until she recently sold the company to Vince, Janice was CEO of Rebecca Taylor in Parker, New York. Under her leadership, Rebecca Taylor launched several new product divisions, including La Vie, Tailored, and Rented, a rental subscription. Prior roles include president of both DKNY Jeans and Calvin Klein Jeans. Janice is a recognized leader in brand management and scaling fashion brands, and we're excited to have her moderate today's panel. Carrie will be back with about 10 minutes remaining to field any additional questions audience has raised during today's session. I'd like to turn it over to Janice to kick things off.
Okay. All right. Listen, thank you, Michael. And without further ado, I'm just going to introduce both Fred and Trevor. Trevor, do you want to say a few words quickly for anyone who doesn't know what Perch is? You want to give the 1 minute, 1 second elevator speech?
Sure, absolutely. Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Trevor Sumner. I'm the CEO of Perch, and we do interactive retail displays that use computer vision to detect what people touch on the shelves. So it's kind of like Minority Report. As you're shopping, the interactive touchscreens react to what you're buying. They can recommend cross-sell, upsell. They can help you configure products, do needs analysis, and really provide an intelligent shopping experience. We believe that the future of in-store retail marries the best of both digital and physical shopping.
Okay, amazing and super timely. Fred, you want to speak a little bit about your new role?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Fred Garantaby. I was most recently with Coty as its head of global digital innovation. I recently joined FGX, which is part of Essilor Luxottica. They're the world's leading manufacturer of eyewear and eyewear products, which includes glass, luxury sun and eye, and specifically the FGX division, which is sun and readers. That includes the Foster Grant and Iron Man brands.
Okay, great. Listen, I think I'm amazing, and I'm amazing. I'm amazed to be here with two pretty incredible tech leaders, and I think probably the biggest question that people have is COVID-19. How do you, from your perspective, feel consumer behavior is going to change in the long term, right? So we all know about the short term. I think we're all dealing with the short term, but let's talk long term. And how do you think that'll impact the retail landscape, both socially and economically? Who wants to take it? Fred, we'll start with you.
Sure. So I think the question is valid in terms of looking at it short and long term. What's interesting is that as we're digging into it, and obviously like many other brands, we have a tremendous amount of retail presence, both mass, drug, department store. So we're looking at the problem from a number of different angles. And I think what we're seeing is the short term is that it's what you would expect. There is, with high touch product categories like eyewear, there is going to be some apprehension about past behaviors where you would probably pick up quite a few things, put them up to your face, try them on. I think it's possibly a different challenge than we may see even at the same price point in CPG categories, cosmetics, where generally the product is taken off the shelf, it's thrown into the basket for consumption. This is a high touch category like many others where the tactile experience is what's driving it. It's fit, it's finish, it's quality, and of course it's what it looks like. So I think what we have to do is look at this in a couple of different aspects. One is I think design is going to be extremely important. So navigation and that, I would say, hesitation for people to spend too much time and touching too many things is going to have to be addressed technologically, from a design standpoint, from merchandising and facings standpoint. I think in the long term, what we may see is that some of this may subside, but it will always be ingrained behavior. And I think what we're seeing in the country generally is representative of what we may see in that shopper market as well, which is depending on geography, depending on demographic, depending on mindset, there are people who feel today even that it's an issue that perhaps is less applicable or something they're not as concerned about. And then you have other groups who are very concerned about it. And I think that, like I said, geography determines that. I think we see a lot of things in both the political and social landscape where, you've got completely opposing opinions. What I do believe is that there will always be, and there will continue to be, a long-term impact on the behavior, which means that some of the practices we've taken to date will need to be reset, not as a reactive measure, but as a strategic forward-facing measure. I also believe there's not one size fits all, because I think the view on the matter is going to be very different for very different people. So I think we have to look at it as that we have to provide a multitude of options and look at shopping behavior, probably as we always have, which is a multifaceted issue, right? But I think short and long term, we are going to see sort of this divide between those who are apprehensive to get back into a high touch category versus those who are less apprehensive. But I think it will inevitably change that behavior, both due to the environment and the way that they've shopped in the past.
Yeah, it's interesting because both of you are dealing with this in the same way. Both of you are a physical presence in a retail space. Not, again, Fred, I understand you have an e-com presence as well. But Trevor, your business is all about, interacting with the displays, the product, and product information. So, from your point of view, Trevor, what do you feel?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I take a different approach to product touch and apprehension there. I mean, if you look at the data, the consumer has been surprisingly resilient. Gap just reported that they're basically at 70% sales. Best Buy is reporting, American Eagle is reporting stronger than expected in-store demand. And the CDC has announced that the transmission via touch is not a major pathway of contagion. The real pathway of contagion, and Fred hit this as well, is because of a variety of political, a highly politicized environment. We haven't had clear direction from the government on what actually transmits the virus. And everyone's an epidemiologist these days. It's basically clear, mostly to me, and I think many others, is that you have to wear a mask and you have to be socially distant. Those are the things that actually matter and reduce the transmission of the virus. So I'm less worried about product touch. I'm also really tied to it. So maybe, it's the entrepreneur, the optimism in the entrepreneur. But I think you're going to really have to work on continuing to provide safety, and marketing safety is a key piece of what you do in retail. How often do you test employees? Do all employees wear masks all the time? and also, what technology you're using to, reduce the amount of interaction between employees and consumers. I think those are all going to be really kind of important and expected from consumers. I think the consumer behaviors themselves, they'll continue to be more budget focused. I don't know why the markets are where they are. This has certainly taught me that whatever I thought I knew about the stock market, I clearly don't. So they're expecting clearly a lot of consumer demand, but I think ultimately, without a follow-up stimulus, we'll see an increased budget focus from the American consumer, starting in the July timeframe, because that's when the checks run out. And so, we'll see. It's going to be fascinating. I mean, this is a giant experiment. It's something that we've never seen before. But ultimately, I've been surprised at how resilient the American consumer is, and how quickly they've gone back to the store with higher conversion rates and higher purchase prices. They're eager to get back to the store.
Okay. Yeah, it'll be very, very interesting to see how we go forward. Okay, so I'd like to follow up with a point, just again, going back to that physical space, right? So what is so interesting right now is the role of stores, right? And how they evolve. In this early phases of reopening, are there any trends that you see are making you optimistic about stores or pessimistic? Trevor, you want to start with that one, and then I'll.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly shared some of that, Daisy. It's surprisingly resilient in terms of the amount of consumer demand. So I would say optimistic. If you look at e-commerce's share, we saw an immediate bump, but for example, grocery has peaked, 4 weeks ago. People want to go back to stores. And so I'm really excited to see that some of our partners in the department store are actually reporting they have higher sales now year over year. And that's a real surprise in specific categories. So, I think, some of that is making me, optimistic. The conversion rates make me optimistic. But I still think we're going to grapple with the long-term implications of this. We have flattened the curve. We have not reduce the curve like other countries, and so I think it's really going to depend on what does this kind of next phase of the pandemic look like to really decide how quickly we can go back to stores and how comfortable we are. I think as soon as I hit a store, I'm going to touch a product, my hands are dirty, right? And I want to sanitize when I go in, and I want to sanitize and go out, and everything in there in the meantime, I'm fine with it. I'll touch as many products as I want, and I think increasingly consumers are going to be the same way. But we'll see.
Okay. And Fred, what about you?
I've had a lot of optimism. And again, I think, Trevor said it well, that it's going to be category dependent. It's going to be product and category dependent. What I've been optimistic about is seeing how a variety of our partner retailers have really risen to the challenge and have made what I would say are very quick adaptations in the grand scheme of the industry to accommodate for this. I think in ways that products are laid out, in the I would say the intricacy of how they're actually funneling consumers through the store. And while I don't think for the long term we're going to have this sort of 50 in 50 out approach that you see in some stores, what I think will happen is that will prompt a lot of learning and sort of thoughtful approach to how those stores are managed and handled in the long term. So I think what it's done, and I would say this even outside the retail environment, is it's forced a lot of new thinking and a lot of new adoption of behavior to both consumers and to retailers that hasn't happened in a very long time. So I'm optimistic in the sense I've seen many of our partner retailers, and just as a consumer, seen many stores adapt really well in an unprecedented situation. And I feel that as things start to gradually roll out, as the curve flattens a bit, and as we can step back and take a breath, a lot of that will be applied into long-term learnings as well, which will benefit everybody, I believe.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And, one of the things I think that's really interesting is the amount of community-based marketing that has happened as part of the pandemic. If you look at how, whether it's how you treat your workers or how you reach out to communities, how you give special hours to seniors or first responders, I think one of the things the stores have done very, very well is connect into their local communities and provide actually a tighter bond than ever before. And a friend of mine said this to me, it's like, okay, we've all talked about this future where we never have to leave our house, that we can order anything and it just comes to our door. And what we're realizing is we don't really like that reality, right? We want to be outside. We want to be part of these communities. And I think it's been really encouraging to see that tie has bound us as a community even more than ever before.
Okay. All right. And this is a question that I've often, and this is for, I would say for you, Trevor, but Fred, I'm going to ask you to answer it in a different way. Trevor, the way I look at it, you have an incredible moment of opportunity here, right? As stores cut back on staffing even further, right? Because they are, they're in deep trouble. Your company can help fill the void for stores and brands by providing valuable brand and product information at point of sale. But here's the rub, right? Anybody in all the CEOs or the leaders, they're finding it hard to justify their marketing investment in physical stores, right? Right now, all these guys are drinking water from a fire hose. How can you partner with these very cash-strapped either retailers or brands to ensure you deliver on ROI for your system, especially in light of the rapid adaptation to e-com and their needs to drive customer acquisition and compete digitally? So you've got all these people on the digital side screaming for budget, but yours is a physical store investment. Talk to me about how you can make executives feel comfortable about moving forward, investing in physical space.
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of things we can do. But first, it's just, let's talk about e-commerce versus brick and mortar stores.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is e-commerce is a terrible business. Nobody makes money on e-commerce. Let's take a second. Nobody makes money on e-commerce. Amazon doesn't make money on e-commerce. They make money on their marketplace and AWS and their advertising market. Everybody loses money on e-commerce, but that's where a lot of growth is, right? In fact, if you look at cost of acquisition, it's better in store. If you look at profitability of a customer, it's better in store. If you get an e-commerce person to also buy in store, they spend 7 times more. Return rates are 30% online and less than 10% in store. All the stores better. In fact, if any of the direct-to-consumer of the companies that have raised $6 million more, 2/3 have opened stores. Amazon is opening stores. Everybody is opening stores for a reason, because that's ultimately where you build kind of that loyalty to a customer and build your profitability. And so for us, part of it is what are we going to do about making stores better? We know that 28% of people go into stores just to buy online. Why is that? And then the reason is because that's where the digital content is. That's where my ratings and reviews are, all my product research, how-to and videos. 87% of people start online because that's where the content is. Mm-hmm. We have to create a future that combines the best of both physical and digital shopping, where I can get that digital content in store and that experience. And to your point, I think there are things that we could do, like revenue shares and other things that allow for us to share in the upside and reduce the kind of investment risk, because I think a lot of people have invested in digital and store and have been burnt by immature technologies, bad implementation. I think there are ways we could do things like a revenue share. The only challenge for us is just anything that elongates the sales cycle, we're generally wary of. But if there's a reset, like if it comes down to cost, we're typically showing 30 to 130% sales lift. There is plenty of margin to share in that upside. And so we'd be eager to talk to people who want to try out that model.
Okay, great. Because I think that is the biggest challenge. And to you, Fred, like where do you sit in terms of your digital investment versus physical investment? How do you manage that conversation in your company? You're new.
I am new, yeah. But what's interesting is as you make your way through different companies and even different verticals, you find a lot of parity in terms of need, in terms of approach, and so on. I would concur with Trevor, and the way I look at it personally, I think a lot of my colleagues, is that they aren't different things, right? I mean, every channel has a role, and every good business looks at all of their channels as a holistic ecosystem. So I would never advise being in a position where you say, okay, we have to take money from here or put it here versus here. The way I look at e-commerce versus the way I look at in-store, I don't look at them really separately. I mean, I think Trevor made some good points that a holistic shopping experience for a brand and for a retailer is really ultimately what's successful. So we still do a tremendous amount of volume in physical stores. And I think there's something special about the in-store experience that can't be replaced. I think there are great things about the online experience that cannot be replaced. I think the best of both worlds approach is right. I think in terms of looking at investment, it's really like anything else. What is the problem you're trying to solve? I think we're up against probably a good number of some new problems. And even if some of those, perception is reality, right? And if consumers are apprehensive, whether it's due to fact or perception or otherwise, it's still a valid problem, right? So the way I look at it is, how would we look at any other investment to create a better retail environment, to drive more volume and to drive margin, a better margin? I think it's the same, right? And so for me, whether it's investing in a piece of technology, whether it's a mobile service, or whether it's something comprehensive from a media standpoint, I like to look at all of these the same. And I try not, and this is very much a philosophy of mine, is I try not to look at digital as sort of the high risk area of investment. If I'm going to put something at point of sale, whether it's digital or otherwise, I look at them the same, right? If it gets the job done, that's ultimately what speaks, right? The results, the experience, what you see in the numbers. So for me, I don't think if you can build a good business case that in any case it becomes a hard sell. What I do think that's difficult is, from a mindset perspective, is to make sure those things tie together, right? When I look at something like Perch, which I've been a customer of through several companies, Trevor knows this, him and I go way back, it's easy for me to say, look, I see a million reasons why a system like this delivers, right? We've got, it's what Trevor said before. What do we not always have at shelf available to us? We don't have the depth of content. We don't have ratings and reviews and expanded video content in people's fingers. These are things people have gotten used to online and they expect, right? And while, yes, they can do it on a mobile device, the reality is that's not always practical, and it's great to really have that proximity and that attainability. For me, it's also a great data play, because what I can do then is I can learn more about that customer at that touch point in ways that I didn't before. So for me, I look at all these things together. How do my investments at the shelf actually capitalize on some of the things that I've done in digital content? How do my investments in e-commerce provide services I can extend through a system at the shelf at that moment of intent? So I think, like as with anything else, if you can build a really solid business case that solves the gap or the problem, I don't think it's a hard sell. I think what people often have trouble doing is making that case, especially with new technologies. I mean, I speak with a bias because I've done this my whole life, but I understand it can be challenging. And it's been my job historically in the companies I've worked at to build those cases in a way that they can be understood well. So,
Okay.
yeah, I would agree with that. I think one of the big failures of in-store technology is the sharing of data, right? And retailers and brands do not share enough data. I think there's a whole world of new partnerships that would encourage brands to spend more money in store if retailers would give some of the data associated with it. I mean, one of the things that we track, and so for example, Fred and I worked at CoverGirl for a virtual try-on experience, and we could tell that 25% of customers who walked in the door went to that. We could tell that the SKUs that weren't even in the top 15 were the number one, number two. That's the type of 40% sales up. We captured data for 25% of the people who came into the experience, and like that data is really, really important, right? Like with Perch, we could show which products people pick up but don't buy. So now you can know that there might be some, opportunities in pricing, packaging, merchandising optimization. Retailers don't want to share that data with brands. They don't want to share their customers' data with brands because they think of them as their customers, right? I think there's, if you look at this, I think of it as like, when you pick up a product, it's like clicking on a product. Tell me about these AirPods. Tell me about whatever I'm picking up. Like if you look at that media delivered on a cost per click basis, it's cheaper than Facebook or Instagram or Google. And the customer has the product in their hand and they're 20 feet from the point of sale. So where are you going to use, your spokesperson, your Julia Roberts for Lancome? That seems to be the appointed time, but you have to share that data to get people like Fred to spend the money in store. And so I think about the fact that we spend billions and billions and billions of dollars on media to influence commerce, except where 85% of commerce happens actually in store. So what is going to change that disparity requires a change in the way retailers and brands partner. I think it changes culture, right? So, Fred knows this as kind of on the innovation side, like, the culture around data is just not the same as it is in digital, right? And how do we bring those competencies throughout the organization in a way to appreciate all the tools that they have? And for that, it's a fascinating time. It's because we know, because of that disparity of attention and spend to where media spend is, that has to change over time. And that investment will be made. And the winners and losers will be the ones who, I think, share the data and prove out the success of these programs.
Okay, great. Fred, I have a question for you. So you're new in your role, you're rolling up your sleeves, you're assessing the business. What technologies other than Perch, which I understand everyone's excited about, what are you excited about investing in? What is really new and something that you could share with the listeners on what you're excited?
I think what is new versus what's new to the category are probably two different things. I mean, I've seen a lot of things all the way from stages of infancy to stages of near death and maturity. I think there's a lot of great stuff on the market right now, and I think it's really about practical design, solution design around those things. Mm-hmm. Augmented reality for me continues to be a very strong player in that. It's not per se new at all, and we've exercised it in a number of categories. Look, eyewear is the same. I think really for me that's an area where I think we can continue to gain a lot of traction, and it does. And I think like a lot of other technologies, it's had a lot of time in the market, but there is this huge adoption curve. What I think that we will see additionally not out of yet, in and as we start to ride out over the next few months in regards to COVID is people are being forced down certain behaviors they may normally not have taken on in another environment. So we're seeing a lot of uptick, obviously, in e-commerce and a lot of the assisted selling tools that go with that. That includes personalization engines. It includes augmented reality. So I continue to be excited about those things. And I honestly, for me, I think the things I get excited about are not specific things on their own, but the connectivity between them, right? The ability to be able to visualize things at the shelf the way you would on a mobile app, the way you would on a .com and otherwise. So for me, that's, I think, probably one of the big things I continue to invest in. And also really, I think a lot of the possibilities of what artificial intelligence can do. It's a heavily used term and it's thrown around. I think done well, or using platforms that are using it in the right way is extremely beneficial in the sense that it really enables us, I think, to hone in. I mean, we still, in this day and age, we think a lot about segmentation. And I think segmentation is great for creating archetypes. But even within a very narrow segment, you have lots of different personalities. It really comes down to the individual user. That's something I think AI does really well when it's utilized in the right way. So for me, being able to match somebody to the perfect product based not just on, a standard decision tree, but things that we have learned collectively from similar profiles and things that person has volunteered to share with us. I'm always excited about that because I think we've just scratched the surface with a lot of that. And if you look out of category, there's a lot of people doing it brilliantly in apparel, in cosmetics, and other places. Yep. That's where I get excited. I mean, it doesn't sound very, it sounds a little boring, but for me, there's so much great technology out there. It's not utilized to its full potential. Seeing those cases come to life for me is very exciting, especially when I can bridge the gap between the two. So,
okay, great. Trevor, this one's for you. So I read this. I don't know if anyone reads anything by Doug Stevens, but he's like the retail prophet. He's a really interesting guy. So I'm going to paraphrase this from one of the articles I read last week. As we go hurtling down into the digital age, brands that are still standing will see physical stores not as permanent monolithic structures, but as ephemeral, flexible, and experientially based concepts aimed less at moving product and more at acquiring new customers by moving hearts and minds with compelling experiences. So that's a long mouthful, right? And we're not just talking about coffee shops and book nooks, right? So Trevor, where do you fit in? Because I think this fits in nicely with what it is your company is sought to solve.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's really interesting, that term experiential, early experiential was about dwell times. Bloomingdale's hosting a yoga class. Great. You get some people in there for yoga, but are they actually perusing the products? Barnes and Noble created Bar and Noble. Well, it doesn't actually connect people to the books, right? The question for all of these to me, and this is why we call what we do product engagement marketing, is how do you leverage this to get people to engage with products? Ultimately, like commerce is about people and products and connecting them, right? Mm-hmm. And we talk about, in our world, product first, people first, right? Mm-hmm. And what connects people around that to us can be, Joe Malone, you pick up a fragrance, it animates into honeysuckle and lemon, it's gorgeous. You can do those experiential things. A lot of it is personalization or virtual try-on, as Fred mentioned. It's videos, it's social media influencers talking about the product, and really just creating a wonderful experience. And you hit on this earlier. It's going to be harder and harder to do with more and more limited sales associates. You've just got to be better about marrying the serendipity of the discovery of product with what the customer needs to actually make that decision feel not just comfortable and educated, but great that this is the right product for them. And so, Mary Kay McKee, who's one Fernbrook Capital, once said to me, the future of retail is digital. The future of brand is physical. It's that experience that connects us to these products is so critical. You just don't get it in e-commerce and clicking a buy button and getting it delivered to your door. And if you want to look at like brand loyalty, about really building an affinity between people and products, that has to happen in a different way. And so I think it starts with just knowing what people are touching and picking up and putting down and delivering the right message at the right time, whether that's a Julia Roberts Lancome video or some amazing animated experience. But something one of the things that he talks about in his books is making things surprising and personalized. And to us, the most personalized signal is not that, hey, a 43-year-old male, that's me, is at the shelf. Like, there's some things you can tell about that, but if I'm touching these AirPods, now like the ultimate personalization is this, right? And telling me about the thing that I'm interested at this very moment. And so I think that's where it starts getting excited about marrying experience, because ultimately every product needs to tell its brand story, and that storytelling can finally happen at a product level for every product that's shelf.
Okay, great. So flip side of the same type of question, what goes away? What's like you go into a store and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe this is still here. Like, or what do you think goes, like, I often think that of the cash wrap, but that's just me. When you go in, like, what do you say, wow, what goes away for you? Because we can't fit it all in, right?
Is this for me or for Trevor?
Both. Go ahead, Fred, you can start.
What goes away? I mean, I think that anything that feels clunky or obstructive to the consumer, really. And just, digging back to your original question, I think experience is subjective, and I think it can be achieved on a lot of levels. We often think of experiential stores as being these big open spaces where people put on VR headsets or get, foot massages, which is awesome, by the way. But a good example, Samsung's 837 store downtown Manhattan, beautiful store. And it does exactly what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to immerse you in the brand experience. The flip side of that is some of these hybrid retail projects, like our partners at Walmart, Store 8, CVS Beauty Lab. These are different degrees of experience which rely on not so much the ethereal, but the practical, right? So for me, coming back to your question, I think anything that, is obstructive, right? Things that are hard to read, designs that are disjointed and make people feel like they don't know where they are in the store. I think there's going to be a lot of attention, especially in this current and post-COVID era, where, it's going to be paid attention to design and user experience in the store the way there is online and with mobile apps. Because what's going to happen now is, as where in the past it may have been acceptable or at least not really heard, where a store could be disjointed and people would have difficulty getting in and out. Now there is this impetus to get people in and out, get the things they need and make them feel satisfied, and also still drive those sales. So I think the things that we're going to see go away are anything that really is obstructive to that. Old school ways of looking at facings, merchandising, point of sale. It's not going to be what it used to be. I'm not going to say it's going to go away, but the shape it's going to take on is going to be different, because I think consumers now, even those who I believe are probably the most liberal about, okay, I'm cool with coming back to the store, handling things, this is fine, I'm back to normal. There's still going to be this expectation, this residual, heightened experience where I need to be able to go in and get what I need. I want to spend more time buying stuff and looking at and learning about the stuff I'm buying than trying to find it. So I think that's where we're going to see, as where wayfinding used to be an ignored thing in the store, whether it's digital or physical, those things are going to be paid a lot more attention to. Because if they're not, consumers are going to gravitate toward the stores. And I would say even the same stores in the same chain, but in different locations that are doing it better. So Walgreens in one location may or may not be the same as a Walgreens in another. They're going to gravitate to the one they know best and the one that's easiest for them to shop. So,
yeah. Agreed. Gone are the days of having to fish all the way in the back of the store to get a quart of milk.
Right. Because it's not beneficial to the consumer. It is part of experience. It's the part of experience, I think, that very often is kind of, leapfrogged over in favor of bigger and shinier things. I think you need to have both. So
agreed. And Trevor, similar, like, how do you think that this will change store design? How do you think that this will create innovation in that area?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, as we look at cashless checkout and other technologies, all the displays by the cashier suddenly get devalued, right? So all the candy bars and Fred, I think you guys market a lot of your glasses there, so I'm sure this is something that you're dealing with and figuring out how that store restructures. But also, I'd echo what Fred said. It's just I'm yearning for the days where like we can get rid of just putting products on shelves, right? Like one of the things that I find that's missing in retail is the notion of curation, right? Like why don't I, when you go to Amazon and you search for batteries, whatever, right? Amazon ads comes out, right? And it's gone from 0 to, $20 billion in 4 years, their advertising platform, right? And this is like Amazon's best recommended, most economical, Why, when I walk down the shelves and the rows in a Target or Walmart, don't I have best baby products, best organic products, best cleaners, best and creating kind of that premium space so that you make it really simple for me as a consumer if I'm looking for something like to curate the best of a product section. And oh, by the way, the brands will pay so much more money for that elevated real estate than a simple end cap. And now you've started kind of creating, your own ad platform, right, within stores, but it's really focused around curation and customer value. And so I think that used to happen just by what you carried on the shelf, but then Amazon, just obliterated that notion with the ability to carry, 200 million SKUs or whatever it is these days with the marketplace.
Exactly.
But they can go back to having a voice. And I think, certainly we could talk about, the cashier store going away. There's a lot of question about like dressing rooms in a COVID environment and safety. But fundamentally, I think in-store has to change. And another thing I would say is like non-powered shelves and 4-point print on the back of some product. Like I'm supposed to read 4-point print to understand your product, or a 3x5 card at Best Buy.
That's where Fred's glasses come in. You gotta go.
Yeah, but if they're on my glasses, that's even more.
That's true.
Right. Totally. I mean, like, how am I supposed to figure out like what those glasses are made of that little tag, right? And we can joke around QR code adoption and make fun of it, but eventually there has to be this tie-in because the labels, the packaging is not a sufficient media for us to learn about products, and we have to bridge that gap. And that gap is going to happen.
Okay, well, listen, guys, thank you so much. I believe I'm going to turn it over to Carrie, and she's going to open it up to questions. Not from me.
Awesome. Great panel, Janice, Fred, and Trevor. Thank you so much. I'm Carrie Miller, again, from Overton, the other general partner, along with Michael. So we wanted to open it up for some of the audience questions. So I'm going to get right to it. So there's questions on kind of, I guess it's really for any of you to answer. Who right now would you say are the most innovative retailers to watch and why? And then kind of coupled on that, there was some questions in the pre-submit as well as here on, in addition to that, can you talk about some of the ways that they're innovating, whether it's virtual reality, some of it could bleed into e-commerce, but if you could talk about what are you seeing as your favorite kind of retailers that are tackling innovation? And what are some of those technologies? It could be perch, but what else are you seeing out there?
I'll take
Brad,
it. Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think there's a pretty wide spectrum here in different categories. I've always been a fan of the work that both some of our like drug and mass category leaders have done. I think Walgreens and Boots in the UK have done a great job, especially as they're starting to redesign stores to, and again, it comes down to, it's not just about the implementation of technology and some digital point of sale, but I think some great, really clean store design, flowing products in a way. I think Trevor said it best. It's a curation style approach to merchandising that it makes it very logical and easy, but also it makes it a little bit on the magical side in the sense that you're discovering things, right? So you're going into stores and you're being led through an aisle or through an end cap or through any premium display in a way where you're discovering things you didn't know were there before, and it drives you to try new things and it drives you to learn more. I think a lot of the apparel retailers, I think Uniqlo, Farfetch do a really nice job of doing this as well. And again, very different category, but I think you see a lot of the department store partners doing a nice job of being, I would say, first to market for sort of in the wild testing of a lot of things like digital mirrors, digital display, try on different types of checkout. And I would also say a really nice integration with things like loyalty programs and things of the like. So I always look very often at the apparel category as well. I think Warby, also in the eyewear category, does a really nice job of both bridging the online and in-store experience. So there's a lot of good stuff out there, depending on the category and the price point.
Yep.
Great. Trevor or Janice, anything to add to that?
I'm just going to make a little, but I was really impressed by Wegmans, of all people. I don't know if anyone's been into a Wegmans, but I think that they've created something really special. And, having seen what they did during the whole COVID piece, they were on it. They were on it way before anyone else was on it, and really respectful. And I thought they did a great job. It's a non-fashion category, but I really was impressed.
Yeah. I would add, kind of the whole story around Best Buy and the turnaround that's happened there, engaging sales associates, changing the culture, how quickly they were able to migrate to BOPIS right they were there faster than anybody and really saved their quarter. And when you think about like innovation, I think a lot of it is about agility. And you look at the people who have been able to move the fastest, that's impressive. To turn a multi-billion-dollar organization on a dime in a matter of a week or two, that's impressive. To understand like the level of systems, education, process, communication, everything that has to happen to do something like that, that to me was amazing. And we can talk about like Nike and scarcity and the sneakers app and all those other things. That's, there's a lot there that they've done that's been really amazing. But, just on a pure agility and execution path, I've been very impressed by a couple different people like Best Buy.
Awesome. Great. So you've talked about kind of like the futurist store. We've received kind of several pre-questions and now in the live chat. What do you think this pandemic means for malls? Do they survive? Do they become reinvented? What is your viewpoint around the idea of malls?
I'll defer this one to you, Trevor, first.
Sure. Well, we write a piece called This Week in Retail at perchinteractive.com. So it's interesting. There's a executive who basically said that based on what he's seeing, he expects 1/3 of malls to disappear by in a year's time frame. And certainly look at the kind of Class B, Class C malls. They've been struggling for a long time. You lose JCPenney. That's a lot of locations. It's going to hurt a lot of those type of malls. And you look at what rent is being paid or not being paid. It's pretty bleak out there. And I think you're going to see a lot of trouble for mall operators and their debt holders. That said, again, there are some positive trends. You're seeing urban movement from urban into suburban that can also, from a population perspective, stem some of that. And, I do think that it's going to become more experiential. I think education, I think cooking and food is going to become a bigger piece of it. You know, we have the benefit in New York City of like, you know, the Oculus, and like you go down there and you go to a virtual reality Star Wars thing. I don't know if anybody here did that during Christmas. That thing was amazing. Like, you know, there are all kinds of things like that and that are experiential that will fill the malls from an entertainment perspective, and move from a retail perspective. It's just been so heavily weighted towards apparel. And, you know, if you look at it, 87% of, you know, store closures are from department stores and, you know, specialty apparel. You take that out and every other category in the physical side is actually growing. You just need smaller footprints. You need to be able to invest more quickly to get in there without a huge investment and a 10-year lease. And, you know, there needs to be greater agility as well in being able to, you know, participate in the mall experience.
Yeah.
It would be interesting, to your point, Trevor, as you see people, I think one of the biggest shifts we're all feeling is just the change that's going to happen in big cities, right? And so as people are not feeling as pressured to show up in the office and are working from home, I think they're going to seek to recreate some of the things they had in the cities in their smaller towns. And some of the, you know, right now you can go into a city for a great, or you could have gone in for a great meal, a great show. So how can you recreate those communities in a more suburban environment? It'd be interesting to see if the mall can play a role in that, or is it just too dead? Is it just too, you know, it's just too out of it?
Yeah.
And because
I think the thing to keep in mind too is that malls, like big box stores, do have a culture that is very rooted in geography, right? We're in major metros, so we say, okay, we could go down Fifth Avenue, we could go, you know, to the fashion district, or we could go to a mall someplace, right? But there are a lot of areas where the mall is the center of attention. It's the place where the movie theater is. It's the place where restaurants are joined. So I think there will be some, you know, Trevor said there will be some businesses or categories I think will suffer, and will potentially be replaced by other high performing categories that will bring people back to these malls. Now, what I can't speak to, and I just don't know the answer to, is what does that traffic trickle look like? Is it doors open and people storm in? Maybe, maybe not. But I think that there is still something valid to be said, that there is a mall culture in many cities and many suburban areas in the U.S. where those places will still tend to be the center of attraction. So I think we will see that there will be sort of this, you know, Darwinian, you know, evolution and trimming of certain types of businesses that are just gonna, which I think is independent of malls, right? When we talk about like JCPenney, which is very unfortunate, but it's not necessarily dependent on the mall culture. It's a separate entity. What we may see is that some of that real estate then goes to cinema. Some of it goes to, you know, experiential centers. Some of it goes to attractions. We don't know. I think that malls definitely are going to have a big challenge ahead of them, but I think there is a survival path, and it's going to have a lot to do with the parts that make up the whole. And also, honestly, the geographies in which they live and what type of dependence that the community has on them as well.
right.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Look, we're out of time. We're a little over. Again, Janice, Trevor, Fred, thank you so much. Thank you to all of our network for joining us. Overton Venture Capital is thrilled to be hosting the virtual spotlight series, bringing incredible innovative companies, thought leaders, business leaders to share views on best practices and how we are all navigating through this time. Hopefully this group can all get back together next year. We can debrief and see how things have evolved, but we do believe, similar to you, that retail is not dead. It's just an opportunity to really reinvent and innovate in the space. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. If you have any follow-up questions, definitely reach out to any of us live, and we will be in touch soon for our next session. Thank you, and have a great rest of the week.
Guys, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.